How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing all right. Mother's Day is always challenging, has been for a few years, as I'm sure you know, and
Yeah.
lots of us know, but we
Yeah.
get
I'm
through it.
always I'm I- I'm always at a loss of what to do with the NP community around Mother's Day, right?
Mhm.
You know, it's such a touchy subject. I mean, a lot of people are still mothers and they
Right.
celebrate that with their children, but it can be so triggering for so many people. And I don't really know. I mean, what do? You say
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day and
Yeah.
hope for the best, hope that you
Hope for the
don't
best, I guess.
uh,
Yeah.
upset someone. It certainly is a weird holiday now. It didn't used to be,
Mhm.
uh, but it is. So, do you have big plans for Mother's Day?
Not really. I think my children are coming home for the ones that can that aren't working and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's pretty low key at my house.
Yeah, here too. We've had a lot of conversations recently that we have entered a new era. So my oldest son, moved to Virginia, took a job in Virginia,
Oh wow.
and my middle child, my youngest son, he lives about a mile away, but he's always working, always doing something. And my daughter's a senior,
Mhm.
and she's running around all over the place. And all my nephews, they live about 10 miles away, but they're all about the same age. They're all moving on and moving out of state. And so when we first moved down here to Florida, we had every holiday together as
Mhm.
both families. So there were always 10 or 15 of us together. And now we're lucky if we can, put together 6 or 7 of us. And
Yeah. Well, it's a 3-month process for me, now this with my because I've got 4 out of the house, just okay, we're looking at this date. Can anybody make that work? And to plan ahead for work and just all of that. Yeah. And we've got then, significant others to factor in. And so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And it used to be like, hey, let's all go to the beach this weekend. Everybody be like,
yeah,
okay. And now it just doesn't work that way. So
yeah.
um, it's a little sad, isn't it?
Hmm. It is.
It's kind of cool because I feel the freedom coming. Do you have
Um,
any? Are yours? Do you have any at home?
I still have one at home. She's a sophomore, but yes, the freedom is that is the that's the payoff.
Right.
Most definitely. Um, when Scott and I, we just out of the blue last 4th of July decided to go to Nashville and we're like, because we can. I mean, and it didn't break the bank
Yeah, and
and
then you're
it was
like,
just a
we
long weekend.
because we can, can't we? We
Yeah,
can, right?
yeah, we kind of had to talk about it because I was like, yeah, I don't think there's any reason why we can't. And when we go out to eat, we can actually get an appetizer and maybe a drink and a meal and even dessert. And it's
Right.
still less, than what it used to cost us.
That's
So,
exactly right.
so
You
yeah,
can order what you want on the menu. You
yeah,
don't have to check it
yeah,
down.
yeah.
Um,
Usually it was all right. You two are sharing a meal, water, no dessert, and then we're getting out of here, kind of.
right, 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 right. So I hate to admit this, but about 2 years ago, my wife and I went to a restaurant, a local restaurant, uh, that for the first time in our lives, we had a full 7 course meal.
Yeah.
I started, with the pre-dinner cocktails and just
Hmm.
all the way through the whole thing. We were there probably almost 3 hours with another couple. Just had, it
Just
was
talking, just
yeah,
just enjoying the food.
like this is what I've been missing in my life. I had
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah,
Uh, that's too
yeah.
funny.
That's definitely the payoff.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So, well, I'm glad. I appreciate you doing this. The website's starting to take off finally, and I'm really excited. But I need I got big plans, and I need to get more people in and
Mhm.
really boost it up to be able to do some things that I want to do. We've got a lot of new courses coming on. I don't know. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah, saw the list. It's a great list, by the way. And I started Brianna's the Writing to Heal one. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
How's that
I
going?
couldn't make the Wednesday, during the day. We didn't have anything on the books, and so I thought I might be able to eke it out. But yeah, then we had a few clients come in. So anyway, I
Yeah,
couldn't do
no
that. But
worries.
no, it's good. I mean, it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, good, good. I'm glad you like it. Uh, I I I want to take it, but I don't have the time to take
I
it
was going to
right
say,
now.
you probably got a few things on your plate right now.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing that we all need,
Hmm.
right? It forces us to take time away, and that's the whole point of it. So
Hmm.
and Brienne's amazing. She's
Yeah.
just absolutely amazing. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to spend any time with her, but she has a huge heart. She's very intelligent, has a huge heart, and only wants what's best for the NP community. And I
Yeah.
just love her to death.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
grateful to
I'm
be working.
excited.
Good, good. So so you finished my course,
Yes.
and what did you think about that?
I thought it was really good. I wish I had had. I should say it this way. I wish I had taken more time. You know, you're trying to fit something in the midst of life, and if I could do it over again, I would, be like, okay, Jodi, you're going to take a chunk of time on Saturday and each day, just really focusing in on some of the things, because it was even the little bit, that I did and I got through all of it. It was really, really good. Um,
Good.
it made me, you know, realize how much I was talking to myself in my head very negatively still.
Yeah.
Still dwelling on, some things that, even I thought, I've worked through that. That's not, bothering me anymore. And yet, you know, when I really started paying attention, I was still talking very negatively to myself regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think the course I mean the course increased your awareness
Hmm.
as far as
Yes.
that's concerned?
Yes,
You-
definitely increased my awareness of, how often I do that. Increased my awareness of, even this little thing. I don't think I sleep well a lot, and because of that, I think I just, my monkey mind is definitely, when you started using that term, I'm like, oh, that's me.
and
It's a,
it's an amazing, isn't it a perfect explanation
it's a perfect explanation of, yes, of your mind. And when you just, I couldn't shut it off, and I was thinking about things. And so, and I started, for me, I used, I interwove my faith in that, so I started trying to, before bed, just really take some time. The TV's off, my phone is down, I'm not doing anything else, but, I pray, and just really try and calm my mind down and get it, wound down. And I think I've been sleeping better and,
Yeah.
feel more rested because of
I
that.
I have no doubt that you've been sleeping better. And the the amazing thing about that, and I think I mentioned this in the course, is that we spend most of our lives unconsciously moving around anyway.
Mhm.
We don't we don't even know. And I've heard experts say it's like 90% of our day is unconscious behavior that we don't even
Mhm.
realize we're doing those things. And you're at that point where there's a stark realization. But most people aren't even aware of what you just said, of what you've experienced. They're watching TV or looking at their phone right until the time they go to bed, and then
Yes.
they're just so exhausted they shut their eyes, and they're not sleeping well
Mhm.
because of the news, because of the social media, because of the constant thinking, and
Mhm.
just taking that time to breathe. Which, right, that the stress causes us to hold our breath. It interrupts our
Mhm.
breathing process, which further causes more fatigue because we're not getting the oxygen
Right.
that we need.
Yeah.
So,
I've started doing it at work sometimes. I'll even notice, it's like my shoulders are, it's like, okay, take a breath and, just kind of relax a little bit, and I didn't realize I was doing it. It's just, as I'm working away and thinking about things, and, as life has gotten busy again, I, as much as, none of us liked COVID, there was a certain little level of, you know, taking things out of our schedule that was
right.
probably okay. I mean, I didn't want to, I don't like the missing family part, and spending time with people part, but just some of the maybe unnecessary things I say yes to, is,
Yeah.
it makes you take stock of that a little bit. So, and I hope I've done a little bit better job, post COVID, adding back in just a few things. But yeah, even at work, I find myself, it's like, okay, take a few deep breaths, relax those shoulders, relax those muscles. And
Good.
yeah.
Good. You brought up a great point about taking something out of your schedule. I have a friend of mine who I was teasing. We were texting, and I was teasing him that he wasn't on TikTok. And he said, Brad, is it going to enrich my life in any way? And, he's a comedian.
Mhm.
He's like a comedian.
Like a comedian.
Uh, and so it was funny, but that the funniest the funniest things are the ones that have an element of truth about them. And he
Mhm.
was, he was asking a legitimate question. And I said, no,
No.
it's not going to enrich your life at all.
Yeah, and people have asked me, 'cause I only have Twitter, I do have Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, but, people have said, you got to get on. I said, I don't even have time to be on the ones I'm on. I said, I don't have time to check one more thing, so I'm good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have to be honest, I enjoy TikTok, and I enjoy it more
Lots
than,
of people have told me that,
yeah,
like you would enjoy it.
yeah. I enjoy it more than the other ones, because there some of the other ones now there's so much negativity and just
Oh,
so much
mhm,
bickering and fighting, so many trolls.
mhm.
I'm sure TikTok will become that way, right? I mean, it'll happen eventually, but there's a lot of mindless entertainment on there. And I used to be like, I went through a phase where I was anti mindless entertainment, you
Mhm.
know. um and I think that's okay now looking back on it. It was a little bit arrogant probably, but I think it was good to make that distinction about, having control of what I'm taking in and what I'm not. So I
Mhm.
know that TikTok is mindless entertainment, and I usually skip past the educational ones
Mm.
because I use it just for mindless
Just
entertainment.
for, yeah, just to relax a little.
But I enjoy it. So, um, but it's easy to get sucked in if you're not careful, and
Mhm.
you think you're going to watch 2 or 3 videos, and next thing you know, it's been 45 minutes. But that's social media anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've started listening to. I've found some music. When we've talked about meditation in your course, and so I've put on sounds. So like whether it be a waterfall or a thunderstorm or something like that, and I fall asleep to that a lot of times, and it seems
Yeah.
like that's helped me focus. Because I'm focusing on that and then not thinking about things a lot of times. So that's helped me sleep for sure. And sometimes I even have that on in the background just when I want to get something done. If I'm working on something, just put in some of that. Just it's calming to me. A creek, babbling that you can find any. Seems like like 8 hours of a creek, a stream running.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's great.
And I do that too, and I love that. When the interesting thing is, and I don't know if you've noticed this, if you turn on something, I don't know, any talk show or any sports show or any, we all know this about the news, but they're all yelling at each other,
Yeah.
and it's just so much chaos.
Hmm.
And it's good that we've reached a point in our lives where we're being intentional about
Yeah.
our environment, because there's just so much chaos and so much anger, that I just do what I can to eliminate that in my own
Hmm.
environment. And I think doing what you're doing, playing that kind of music, I enjoy. Actually want to tell you a story if I could.
Yeah.
Uh, this was probably in the year 2000. I was working in Indianapolis. I lived on the west side, and I was working on the far east side. And it was a hot day in probably July. Sometime it was really hot. I
Really hot.
remember being really hot, and my air conditioning had stopped working, and I hadn't had it fixed yet. And I'm coming through downtown Indianapolis, and I get stuck in rush hour traffic coming home, and we're at a standstill. And I just have just sweat pouring off of me, and everybody's being aggressive and angry,
Hmm.
and I looked, I smelled this horrid smell, and I looked in front of me. I was right behind a dump truck that had dead horses in it,
Oh no.
and it was just god awful. And I was listening to one of my favorite rock bands called Pantera. They're real heavy metal and real aggressive heavy metal. And I realized that I was white knuckling the steering wheel. And I was thinking, I suddenly had a moment of clarity as I was looking around at my environment. I was like, all right, I can't do anything about the air conditioning.
Right.
I will, but I can't right now. It's hot out. I can't do anything about that. I'm stuck in rush hour. I can't do anything about that. I had to come home from work. Uh, the one thing that I could change was the music I was listening to. And I immediately changed for good the type of music I listen to. Now I still listen to Pantera like when I work out. So I'm
Yeah.
very intentional about the mood that I'm in or the mood that I want
Mhm.
with listening to music, but I just won't listen to Pantera or AC/DC or whatever just
Mhm.
under normal circumstances, I it's more relaxing music, or I'll put on, some background stuff like you were talking about, a rainstorm or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical to have that awareness and be intentional about it. So I think that's amazing you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've even found myself, I have a 40-minute commute now, where I used to have a really short commute. And sometimes I don't turn anything on.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Sometimes I'm thinking this is just awesome. You know, it's just
Right.
quiet. There's nobody calling, nobody asking anything, nobody. Yeah, it's just so yeah, I'm learning as I get older to, cherish even the moments of silence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I like that. Um, well, I wanted to also tell you about the course. I mean, you said that you hurried through it and blah blah blah, and
That's kind
I
of
talk.
confession time, it's just
Yeah, no, 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 no. It's understandable. I'm working on my PhD. I do the same thing. I,
Mhm,
it's one of the things I hate about being busy and having so much reading in the
mhm.
PhD program is that I have to hurry,
Yeah.
and I'm I'm so fascinated and so interested. I'd rather just take it really slow, but then I would just read all day long every day, and I couldn't get anything else done. And so, we got to do what we got to do.
Mhm.
But the course is available to you forever.
Yes.
You can always
Yeah.
go back and redo it, which I always highly recommend because you'll hear it differently next time.
Well, yeah, you always get something different, just
Yeah,
you catch something that you didn't catch the first time. So
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
definitely want to do that.
yeah. And you'll be farther along in your journey,
Hmm.
and your mindset's already changed. I know you've changed. I know it's changed a little bit, but it's probably changed even more than you realize. And so,
Probably,
it'll
probably.
be a different application when you
Hmm.
go back through it. Um, so I know that, um, gosh, what have we known each other now? 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I joined in 2018, that fall, like October, November, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I don't
was in
remember the first
July of
time.
2018.
Yeah.
So, okay. Okay. So, um, as a part of my website, I've created a community with group meetings and group discussions,
Hmm.
and is modeled off of the discussions we did in the big group in the
Yeah.
NP uh, friends group. And I know that you and I've talked a little bit about how that's affected you in your journey, and I wondered if you would share some of that with me today.
Mm.
Just the group aspect, the group dynamic, and why, because that's why I've made I when I could when I was developing the website, when I was developing the Lit Academy, the original thought was courses, but then I
Mhm.
realized that uh, you can learn you can learn anything anywhere. I mean, you can find what you're looking for anywhere you want, but I think it's that community element, that advocacy, that support of having peers and discussing it, and having that constant support there that is critical. And that's why I added the community and
Mhm.
wanted to make that a two-pronged um, system, so to speak. And I wondered if you would speak a little bit on your journey and what these support groups and the that we offer in the MP experience, what that's done for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny to think about that in light of the last, 2 years that we've had with COVID, because I can't imagine what this time would have been like had we not had technology. Because I think it has shown us above all else how important relationships are and community is, and interactions with others, and even something as simple as a hug. How much you desperately missed that with people in your family. So when you're talking about something like this MPE journey, um, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but I don't know that I would have gotten through this journey um, in a very healthy manner at all, or very well at all, or with my marriage intact. I mean, I don't know that I would have gotten through it without the support groups that I've been able to be in. Um, just simply being able to, type something up and throw it out there, or then once, some of the Zoom meetings started, being able to see faces and hear people say and talk about their experience and having it match yours. I mean, little details might be different, but the underlying feelings and emotions, sometimes you would find someone that just was so intensely like your own that, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about without getting emotional. It's just, it was, it was life-saving, to not put too much of a, like I said, over dramatic tone to it. Um, you have no one to talk to that understands what you're feeling. Um, my spouse, my husband was amazing, but at the end of the day, he did not understand. And I mean, there are times when he'll look at me and he's like, I'm trying, hon, I'm trying to, he's like, because, it's been 4 years, or well, I'm coming up on 4 years. And the idea that I still have some days where I can really struggle is hard for him to understand. And no matter how hard he tries. And so that's when, either if I can get into one of the, Zoom group meetings, or just throw something out on Facebook and you have people comment back that, hey, we're here, we love you. That's exactly how I just went through that yesterday. I mean, it's just, for whatever reason, you've got this community of people who really, truly understand, what you're feeling and what you're going through. And without that, the level of loneliness in this, I think, would be a little overwhelming for me.
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I know you're not. I know thousands of people in one particular group that would agree with everything that you just said. Um, I think one of the biggest fallacies that we have, and I think, and there's probably a lot of different reasons why, but we feel like we can, or we should be able to handle anything that
Mhm.
life throws our way,
Yeah.
particularly by ourselves. And I think we do a great disservice in our society of communicating that, whether it's consciously or unconsciously,
Mhm.
to people, um, because I had never in my life, I had gone through a tremendous tragedy in around 2003, 2005, and I felt alone. I mean, I had my wife. We almost divorced, but we decided to stay married, and she was a huge support to me. But I still did everything on my own. I I sought out information, learned on my own, and I worked through it on my own. I didn't have anybody to talk to,
Mhm.
and but the world was different at that point. I there weren't. I don't even know if what was the first one? Skype. Skype might
Mm.
have been
Yeah.
around, but it wasn't very widely used, and so just doing it on the internet wasn't a thing. I was going to have to find, and I tried to go to one or two support groups. I couldn't find anything to really fit, and it it's a completely different experience than what I experienced after my MPE discovery in 2018 with the online group, and then all the online meetings that we have, and now
Mhm.
with my platform, and even 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 being a facilitator of these meetings, I learned so much from people, and having the discussions in here, the same thing that you said. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter whether you're a facilitator or you're just or you're participating in it, just having that camaraderie
Mhm.
um, and the support to know that you're not alone, and
Yeah.
that your feelings are valid.
Mhm.
A lot of toxic shame comes with being angry for things that, and upset, and you think, why didn't I get over this, or why am I still angry? And you just touched on that a second ago.
Mhm.
um, and just having people tell you it's okay, and it's okay to be mad, it's okay to cry, and that that's a part of us we don't show people
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah. And I've been amazed at, I've had this greater understanding and appreciation for human connection. Um, because there's even a difference. So, when I'm first in the group and it's all just, posts and reading people's comments and, stuff like that. And when we did our first an in-person, where you're doing on Zoom or whatever it was, I cried the first time I saw Catherine in person on a computer screen. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just, it was emotional. I mean, there was this person that had been, so supportive and helpful. And, she'd brought me in the group, and, and then I'm seeing her, it's like she's real. She's not just, this name behind some words on a screen. And then it was even more impactful to me than when, because I was a moderator for a while, when the first time I saw someone in person that I had brought in the group, and she was crying because she saw me. And it's just that whole thing. I'm thinking, this random DNA test that I took has connected me in really intense ways to people that I would have never met otherwise. Never. There would have been, nothing to bring us together. So, and it's not just that I'm getting to know them, it's that I'm getting to know them because we've together struggled through something so intensely personal and yet so intensely bizarre that, only, you've got this connection that only the group kind of understands.
Yeah, for sure. And uh, there's an analogy I use for those, for the discussion groups and the support groups, whether it's, in the big group that you're talking about there, or even on the website, on
Mhm.
as part of the NP experience, or on Lit Academy in general. It's that we're all walking up the mountain, and the person in front of us leans down and gives us a hand and pulls us up on the next ledge. And then we turn around and we lend a hand to the person behind us and pull them up on the ledge. And then they turn around and they lend a hand to the person
Mhm.
behind them. And that's the way this works.
Yeah.
That's the way this works very, very well. It's life changing for sure.
Yeah. Well, and even in the course, then what was nice about that was, the group was so much smaller. It's like, so then when you start getting into just little, even smaller intimate groups where, you really do get to know each other even deeper. And, sometimes you have time to delve deeper into, just, well, gosh, this discussion really triggered this, or, whatever, so there were some things, during the course, it's like, okay, this really made me, and it brought out some of our MPE, struggles that we still have. And it was amazing to be able to really just get to know people on a much deeper level as you're working through
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. There's a couple things that you said that I wanted to touch on. One is that what I liked about that specific group is that I think a little more than half were NPs, but there were some non-NPs in there.
Hmm.
And so, for anyone listening, I want to make sure that they know that this isn't the courses aren't NP specific by
Hmm.
any stretch of the imagination. We do have NPE specific meetings, but the courses are designed to help anyone, and we have non-NPE specific meetings as well. But when you talked about the small groups, that is also one of the factors of why I started doing this, because the other group has gotten so big, and
Right.
it's still amazing,
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. And it offers the big group offers people an opportunity who are brand new, who aren't yet comfortable with talking about it, they're still feeling ashamed, to just kind of come in and stand in the back room and let other people talk.
Hmm.
And they're going into the shallow water very slowly, and
Hmm.
that's extremely beneficial. But when it's time to start getting down to the nitty gritty and start doing work, it's nice to have the smaller group. So I have made the decision that I'm pretty adamant that we're going to keep the group small.
Hmm.
So as the membership grows and groups start expanding,
Hmm.
we're going to add more of them,
Yeah.
to split that down, to make sure that we keep it at a lower manageable level, where everyone feels like every week they have an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that I'm really proud of. I'm really looking forward to. The other thing is that in my community, in the Lit Academy and the MP experience, and the DNA, the MP Friends group does an amazing job of keeping things positive.
Yeah.
So this is no reflection on them at all. But social media in general has de-evolved to where there's a lot of negativity, a lot of trolls. And being in this private online paid community
Hmm.
um, is different,
It
because
is.
we are running the show, and we are it's a support community. There's no room for negativity. If you don't agree, that's fine. Go tell somebody else on Facebook or Twitter, but you're not going to do it here. And it's worked really, really, really well. And that's something else that we're really proud of,
Mhm.
because with this experience and any, I'm dedicated to trauma, and trauma riddles, this experience is riddled with trauma, but there are non-NP people as well who are part of the website and the community. Um, and trauma brings a lot of shame, a lot of toxic shame, and a lot of guilt, and just a lot of weird feelings.
Mhm.
That's why we don't talk about it. And so if it's going to be a vulnerable space, and it's going to be a safe space. And that is a promise that I make.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I really appreciate coming from an MPE's angle is because there were people who were non MPEs in the group, and we were all able to discuss trauma and how it was affecting us, and the things that we were going through. And so for an MPE, what it does is it validates. It's like, this was a trauma, because I think for a long time, people look at it like, well, so what? You took a little DNA test and on Ancestry, you found this information out. What's the big deal? And what this has enabled us to do is say, no, we this is a trauma. And we're showing the same symptoms, we're showing the same emotions, we're going through the same journey as someone else who's going through a different trauma. And so when you bring all those people together to work through trauma, it becomes less of a, okay, well, this, you just have this weird situation, and it just becomes, no, I'm just a person struggling with a trauma. And it brings us all together to work through that together. And it makes it, we don't feel like an outlier so much of, that we should have just been able to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point, because because it invokes guilt and shame,
Mhm.
right? Why haven't you gotten over this, or why haven't I gotten over this? And then when you understand that it is something deeper, uh, then it changes everything. And then
It does.
when we find the resources to be able to do something about it, it
Yeah.
changes the game even
Yeah. You
further.
start looking in the right places for help. It's not just a, okay, I just need to sit here and get over it and try not to think about it, because I mean, you can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
That would all of the quiet music in the world would not help me back in September of 2018. My brain was on overdrive and kind of running the show at that point in time. So,
yeah.
but it does it once you realize, and people are telling you, yes, this is a trauma, then you go the right places, whether that be counseling or support groups like this, or taking courses like you have, where you can actually start working through some of those things.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna ask you a pretty direct question
Yeah.
about the NPE experience and the website, the Lit Academy, and the courses. Um, with with your experience, and particularly your NPE experience, and overcoming the trauma and working through it, you just joined the community, the website. Um, what, 5 months ago? I think it was in January, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to do that mindfulness course.
Do you, do you think that would have helped you had you had that 3 years ago? You think it would have sped up the process?
Oh, hands down, yes. Easily, yes. Um, because it would have given me, beyond just the support of the main Facebook group, so there's where you find people that understand what you're doing. What you get through a course like that are tools that you can use daily. And that's what I didn't have. It's like, okay, I've got some place to go and talk, because I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do with these emotions. I found myself in a pool of tears one day, randomly realizing I didn't have any full siblings on the planet. And I don't know why that was a big deal that day, but it was. And so I had a place to go talk about that. But what the course has given me are some tools, even in that moment, to take some deep breaths, to go for a walk, which I know sounds so simple, but it's not. I wasn't thinking of that at the time. It was like I couldn't put logical thoughts together. You know
Right.
what I mean? I couldn't, think to myself, oh, let's get outside. Let's go for a walk, take deep breaths, listen to some calm music, write down, journal. I mean, I didn't start doing that for a good year, probably. Just throwing up thoughts onto a page to get them out of my head.
Yeah.
a lot of things that's what I feel like the course gives you, are tools that help you to cope in the day.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Um, I I lost my train of thought. Thinking about too many things at once.
Monkey mind, monkey mind.
Right. Exactly. Uh, well, I appreciate you saying that, and that's the entire reason that I put this together. You know, I'm trying to catch people. Uh, I, I think anyone, and I guess I'm going to ask you this question as well. You know, I put this together to try to catch people early in their experience,
Mhm.
because we have more information, we understand it better now, and we can catch people earlier and put them on the road to recovery earlier.
Mhm.
But I want to remind anybody listening that you were 3 years into your experience before you joined the community, before you joined
Mhm.
the NPE experience. And it was still, you've admitted, you know, over the last 30 minutes that it was still incredibly helpful. So it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey. And even if you're not an NPE, it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey. And I've designed this community, this platform specifically. My goal is to have a spectrum of psychoeducation, of courses that cover various types of trauma in the various stages. So whatever anyone has experienced, and wherever they're at in their healing journey, they can come in and find exactly what they need for where they're at, and then keep moving forward. That's the ultimate goal. And we're doing that with we have my course, the mindfulness trauma course, which I call managing stress and anxiety. We're getting ready to put up we just put out Writing is Healing with Brian Kirkpatrick. We have Surviving Narcissistic Abuse with Kimberly Weeks coming in July. We have Attachment Styles with Jamie Carter. She's an RN, and she's a trauma recovery coach who specializes in attachment styles, coming in August. Actually, that's coming in September. In August, I have a beautiful friend of mine that I'm in my PhD program with, that she's put together a program. She has run retreats for like 10 years. She's putting together a program called Cultivating a Heart-Centered Practice, and it's around meditation and healing, that kind of thing. But we're working on a Trauma 101 course. I have a program I'm going to launch in January called a Certified Trauma Specialist. It's actually a certification through the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaches. And I'm working on an art therapy course and a couple other a Zen Buddhism course. So my goal is to just have this wide spectrum where anybody can join to find what they need in a positive, safe, healthy environment.
Well, yes, my advice would be, just because I am farther in, would be that I don't know that you ever are done healing from a
No,
trauma.
no.
And so no matter, you know, where you are, and that's, I think, when I decided to do it, I think in the back of my mind, I knew, even though I was 3 years in, I still had stuff, you know, that I needed to work through. But the course brought up even more. I'm like, okay, here's something I need to, you know, I didn't even realize this was still bothering me as much as it is. And so it helped me with that. And then I think there's a tremendous value. And again, you know, I keep going back to human relationships, but it's just like it is in life. You know, grandmothers and mothers and daughters and, you know, great grand, when you get people all in a room, whether that be men, you know, whatever it is, that generational thing, you all have something to bring to the table. And I think it's the same when you're talking about recovering from something. So having people in a group when you're talking that are at different stages of that, I think is so valuable. You know, you have something to offer each other. You have hope to offer to each other. You have, you know, that brand new person that's just like on the ledge. And you have the person, you know, 4 years in, that's saying, you know what, I still tiptoe up to that ledge, you know, but it'll be okay. And, you know, but I still, you know, I'm still there with you sometimes. And so everybody has that, you know, I think something of value to give in those situations.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and it's loosely modeled after the 12-step program. That's exactly advocacy. There's a reason that advocacy is one of the 12 steps, because having that peer support, that peer
Yeah.
advice of someone who has been over that terrain. And I say this all the time about trauma survivors, and and I'm involved with the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaches. And what that is that people who are trauma survivors who are then trained in trauma and responding to trauma, and coach people through their journey. And the beauty about that is that I would much rather, like, if I were going to go to the Amazon jungle, and I could talk to someone who's an Amazonian expert because they learned it in college but they've never been there, or some guy who dropped out of high school but he spent 25 years in the Amazon jungle, guess which one
I'm picking. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't mean to dismiss professionalism or college degrees or therapists or anything. I don't mean that at all, because I think therapy is an amazing tool that people should utilize when necessary. I'm just, there's nothing like having somebody that's already been there to share their experience with you, and that's exactly what we're doing in these groups. And I'm glad that I appreciate you bringing that up. If you had advice, if you wanted to give some advice to a new NPE, what would it be?
Talk a lot, in whether that be in a group or in our attend, for sure, just because they were so much, once we started those Zoom meetings, they were so much more valuable, even than just posting things and talking with people that way. If at all possible, join those. Just seeing faces of people who are going through the same thing was invaluable, even if you don't say anything. I mean, you can sit there and just listen. You don't have to be ready to tell your whole story, because sometimes you don't even know where to start. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't even know where to begin to explain what you're feeling. But just sitting there, sometimes listening to other people mumble through it or try and get through it, or people that have, been through it a long time, and, talking about, things that they've done to help themselves, grow and that kind of thing. It's invaluable. So that's what would be my first advice, is to show up to those as often as you can. Show up to those.
Yeah, I love that advice. I call it lurking
Yeah.
in the shadows, just listening, letting people normalize your story. You're hearing other people talk.
You don't even have to have your camera on. You just sit there and listen, and soak it all in.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives you new vocabulary as well, and new understanding.
It gives you affirmation and validation, and it brings you back from that brink of, I think I'm losing it. I don't know where to even begin, and it gets you kind of centered again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to also bring up that we are planning an event in September, right? And the NPE Experience is sponsoring. We have quarterly events, and in September, for the third quarter 2022, we are putting together a race, ethnicity, and identity discussion panel with NPEs who have experienced some type of identity disruption that includes their racial identity and or their ethnic identity. For anyone listening, Jodi has an amazing, compelling story, and I had interviewed her beforehand, so we won't go into that today. But I suggest that you find the older episode of the Bradley Hall Show where I interviewed Jodi. It's an amazing story. I've gotten so much great feedback from that, as I'm sure you have too.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Hopefully it helps somebody.
Yeah. And I haven't secured the other guests, so I don't want to mention names right now, but we're going to have an amazing panel, and I'm really looking forward to facilitating that and hearing all of you discuss your stories and share that information. And I know that there's a lot of people who are going to benefit from that.
I'm really looking forward to it too. It's for me that's one of the ongoing parts of my story that it's forever changing, forever evolving. Sometimes I feel like daily, but sometimes just weekly. But yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said something earlier that reminds me of you said something that we're not like that we're never done, and we are never done. We have this tendency to want to put it on cruise control. We want life to be easy, but I honestly don't think we're happy when life is easy. I mean, we don't want it to be extremely difficult. Lord knows I've had enough of that, right? But there's always challenges in life, and the way to handle them is to turn inward and dig a little deeper, and find and gain an understanding for that, and not just swallow it, not just accept it, not just override it. We have a lot of that in our society where people just get over it and snowflake and all that. I can't stand the word snowflake. I won't listen to anyone who uses that word. But we don't need to get over it. That causes problems in the end. Can I share another story with you?
Yes, absolutely.
This is quite a dramatic story. This is happening to me right now. This is in real time. Okay. I have a my mother has two siblings. She had a younger sister and an older brother. They had a traumatic childhood, and it's not my story to tell, so I won't go into that story, but it was traumatic, and I can verify that for all three of them. And they've all had their issues through adulthood. And but my uncle was the one who seemed like he had everything together my whole life, and he was a positive male influence in my life, and I was very close to him. And I noticed I tried to call him 9 months ago, and he acted a little strange. I wasn't really sure why, and he said a couple things to me that really didn't make a lot of sense. And then I started seeing some Facebook posts a couple months ago that were a little off kilter, and I didn't really understand why. A little over a week ago, almost 2 weeks, it'll be 2 weeks ago Sunday, my uncle shot and killed his sister, my aunt, the younger sister, not my mother, but his younger sister, and her husband, and then had a standoff with SWAT and killed himself. And this is just devastated my family, and I'm devastated. I've done a lot of crying in the last 2 weeks, which, following my own advice, right? You've undoubtedly heard me say that there's a reason that we want to cry. I don't know why we don't cry. We should cry it out. My initial instinct was to get busy. I was like, men's mental health, man. I gotta, and then I was like, wait a minute. That's a trauma response. I don't need to be busier. I need to sit down and process this. And it's been a rough 2 weeks. But the moral of the story, the reason I'm talking about this, is that my uncle, I've realized he and my aunt, after 50 some years of marriage, divorced 2 years ago. And I understand now it's because his mental health started to decline, and my aunt thought it was in her best interest for whatever reason. And which, I know the details. It's not my story to share, but she was his last safety. That's not the word I want to use, but she was the last person that he could confide in. And then he didn't have her, and he didn't have any resources. He didn't know how to find resources. He just descended into the depths of hell, and until where he lost it and he snapped. And my point with this whole thing is that he had spent his whole life just getting over it, just rubbing some dirt on it, pulled himself up by his bootstraps, whatever. He spent his whole life just overcoming and never dealt with the demons that were lurking in the shadows. And when we do that, when we repress our trauma, it never goes away. And when we experience new trauma, we just slap that on top, and we get new trauma, we slap that on top. And not only that, but it begins to manifest exponentially, begins to fester. And then it's going to come out in ways that we wish it hadn't. And not all of them are as dramatically, tragically violent as the story I just told you about my uncle. But it looks like many things. It looks like depression. It looks like, there's just a wide myriad. I don't need to go over that. But so we have to deal with it. And the pandemic has brought a new level of not only a new level of trauma, but a new level of awareness that what we're doing isn't working. And we have to do something differently. And I think what we've been talking about this whole 45 minutes here is exactly what we need. We need more human connection. We need more discussion. We need more psychoeducation. We need to understand why we react the way we do, that it's okay that we react, and what we need to do about it. And then someone there to help us do that. And at the end of this soapbox speech, I'm just going to throw in, that's why I've created the MP experience in the Lit Academy right there. So thank you for letting me share that. And I was actually able to keep my emotions together.
I don't know how. Yeah, I've been thinking about you and your family.
Well, I appreciate that. It's still not over, but it's just a tragedy, and everyone's just hurt, and everyone's lashing out, and understandably so. But the takeaway I really want to, I'm going to start talking about this more. I'm going to start talking about it on TikTok, and is that the lack of resources and just not getting help, and use him as an example, that it's not good. It's not good at all, because it may not manifest violently, but it may manifest physically. Right. And I think a lot of autoimmune diseases have been linked to significant trauma, different cancer, so many different things, which, by the way, mindfulness and meditation has been proven to help with those things from a medical standpoint. They've done medical studies that they help with not only maintaining diseases, specific diseases, but also in some cases reversing them. And that's a proven fact. Maybe I'll drop the source John Kabat-Zinn is, if anybody's interested, wants to look that up. He's done a lot of studies with that. So, okay. Well, before we go, is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to add?
No, I think I would just piggyback to end, just kind of off of what you're saying, because one of the things that it brought out when I did the mindfulness course with you is kind of understanding your own personality. And I am I'm a list maker, and I'm a check mark person, and so I want a beginning, I want an end, and I want things fixed. That's kind of that's how I roll. And this has taught me that it's not, I need to quit thinking that way, because it's not over. I'm not going to be done healing, because I think as soon as because I know I reached a point along here where I thought that, it's like, oh, I'm good. I think I'm just, and then, so then when something comes up, it slams me into the wall.
Right.
Whereas if I was just in this constant, I'm aware of, my feelings more, I'm aware of when things are starting to bother me more. I can kind of catch those as they're coming, and just continue to work at it. And so, just continuing to talk and continuing to, meet in these groups and things like that. Because you definitely don't want, it builds up if you don't.
Yeah. And to your point about, thinking that you're done, and then you struggle handling something new, it's a huge paradigm shift, right? Because we want that cruise control. We're like, hey, I did my work. Yeah. I'm done. I'm good. And it does hit you. But when you have that different mindset, you're like, okay, what's the day going to bring me now? And it changes your expectations, right? Anger happens when things don't work out the way we think they're supposed to.
Right.
whether we're right or we're wrong, it doesn't matter. That's when we get angry, is when we and frustrated. And I talk a lot about unrealistic expectations, that we are, and I just actually posted a TikTok on this today, actually, that that our own suffering, our own disappointment, a lot of times comes from our unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes.
And not that we shouldn't have expectations and standards. I don't mean that at all, but we should constantly be reevaluating them as we learn new information. And I think that that falls into this category, that, you know, you going back to earlier in the conversation, you've been through the course, right? You can be like, hey, I've already done that course.
Yeah, I've done it.
But when you go back again, whether it's today or it's 6 months from now or 6 years from now, or all three of those, you will hear it differently every time because you've grown in between them. And we just can't stop growing. We don't have to actively be pursuing like we did when we had our MPE experience,
Right.
or, you know, when I had the traumatic experience in the early 2000s. But at some level, we have to always be aware that we're still evolving, and we will until the day we die, for sure. So, well, I'm so grateful that you decided to come on here with me today. I just love talking to you.
Well, I like.
Yeah.
I wish I was in Florida and not in Iowa.
Is it warming up there?
Finally, yeah, we're
Good.
going to decide, I guess, to have spring eventually here,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's
Well,
been pretty ugly so far.
Through my Midwest experience, I can tell you that now life is going to be tolerable for the next 5 months, and
Yes.
you'll think things are great. And in my experience, then it would start to turn cold, and about February, I'd be cussing myself out because I hadn't.
Because I still live here. Why do I still live here? Yes.
Meanwhile, on the flip side, and I'm being serious, it's going to be really hot here.
Yes, and I have had people tell me I need to find somewhere in the middle. You know, I've got 4 seasons, but just not extremes. That's what.
Yeah, or just be a snowbird.
Yes, yeah, and I can see my husband and I probably being that someday.
Yeah, because the winter is beautiful down here for sure.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, well, thank you again so much for joining me. Always
Yes.
a pleasure to talk to you, and
Pleasure to talk
we'll
to you
connect
too.
soon on the event in September.
Yes, sounds very good. And I'm, like I said, thinking of you and your family, and I'm praying for you guys as you're working through this.
I know that. I appreciate that.
All
Jodi,
right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye,
Thanks.
Brad.
Bye-bye.